going to look at writing or creative writing skills for grade 8 and 9. And my name, as it appears there, is Ntia Mpanya. I'm the subject advisor for English, grade 8 and 9 at in Muteo District Office. Today the focus will be on essays and transactional writings, and it is for both teachers and learners. And remember, before you can start assessing this, you must be able to understand that we've got only one type of transactional, unlike in the FET phase where they've got a longer and transactional text. We don't make that distinctions. In grade 8 and 9, we only have transactional text. Therefore, you must be able to know which text you are going to use. And furthermore, in essays, we have three types of essays for grade 8 and 9. That is your narrative, your descriptive, and reflective for grade 9. And then for grade 8 is narrative, descriptive, and argumentative. So please don't go and choose any other essay or transactional text beyond those that were given in your ATPs. Please consult your ATP regularly and see on which weeks one has to cover these topics. Thank you very much. Let's go to our presentation on how to teach creative writing skills. Let's start with essays. What is writing? Writing is the most powerful instrument of communication that allows the learner to construct and communicate thoughts and ideas coherently. Frequent writing practices, and I want to repeat it, frequent writing practices across a variety of contexts, tasks, and subjects enables learners to communicate functionally and creatively. Remember, they must be frequent. Writing which is appropriately scaffolded using writing frames as and when necessary produces competent, versatile writers who will be able to use their skills to develop and present appropriate written, visual, and multimedia text for a variety of purposes. Writing is important because it enables learners to think about grammar and spelling. This encourages learners to process the language, speeds up language acquisition, and increases accuracy. So it's very important that you teach writing so that learners can be able to have to acquire speedily the language and to increase their accuracy. In the previous phase, learners learned how to write a range of creative and information text using writing frames as support. Learners in the senior phase are expected to write a particular type of text independently. They will also employ the writing process to produce well-organized, grammatically correct writing text. Writing processes and strategies. Right. Good writing is a skill that needs to be developed and supported. Although reading is an important source of input, it is also through writing that writing skills are developed. Writing instruction usually involves working through the writing process itself. However, not every step of the process will be used on every occasion. For example, if learners are writing a familiar text type, they will not need to analyze its structure and language features in so much detail. There may also be occasions when teachers need to focus on sentence construction or paragraph writing, or learners write text without drafts in preparation for exams. That's what I always emphasize at schools, that we must not give learners a full-length essay as a type of practice for informal activities. Let us try to break it into sentence construction or paragraph writing so that learners know how to use sentences to connect to paragraphs and then to the full-length essays. What are the writing processes involved in writing. These are the steps that you have to take before you embark on a process of writing. And this must be taught to learners. Brainstorming. You must look closely at the topics given. Look at which topic suits you. You know that you are not an argumentative person, so you can't choose an argumentative essay. So choose the essay that suits your personality, your type. And after you've chosen that topic, you can now start the brainstorming process. Brainstorm or bring together all the facts, ideas, feelings, details that you can think of. And remember, teachers, no idea is stupid. So jot down everything. Do not sort through them until the next stage. So you accept everything. Even if it's out of line, just accept it. You may never know. If mind map does not work for you, use another form of planning, such as a flow chart or bullet points. But make sure that you do use some form of planning. It really is easy to see a piece of writing that is not well planned. How to create a rough draft. Using the brainstorm, create paragraphs using ideas. Try to organize the brainstorming ideas into that which will go together. Try to organize the order that the ideas are put into paragraphs. Use some sort of organizational tool, e.g. chronological order, relational order of importance. If necessary, create the body first. Then go back and create the body and conclusion. This can work for most types of writing except narrative. Do not fuss with spelling, punctuation, word usage, and grammar. Right. After that, we go to revising. In revising, you are trying to improve what you already have in a brainstorming or during brainstorming process or step. Revising means improving. It is not finding mistakes, but improving on what you already have. You are supposed to rearrange your ideas so that they are organized and flow better. And you also remove the ideas that are not linked to the topic or do not belong in that group of ideas, which will make up the essay according to the topic that you have chosen. You can also add transition words and other descriptive details. Remember, your transition words will be your conjunctions, which will add your sentences together and eventually inform your paragraphs. Change vocabulary where necessary, but you do understand that grade 8 and 9 learners do not have a lot in terms of vocabulary in the targeted language. So try to see if you cannot change difficult words into simpler ways that you'll be able to understand much better. Read and improve in terms of adding or removing ideas. Right. Remember, when you write a creative piece, you are actually looking at which audience are you addressing and what is the purpose of this piece. Then when you have decided on your audience and purpose, ensure that your tone, register, and diction are appropriate to the audience and the purpose of the writing. And then editing. After all of this, you start to edit. You cut out now what is not necessary, and you try to correct what could be wrong. Read in editing, you must read your essay out aloud if possible, or have someone else reading it to you. That's why we have moderators. Remember, you may sometimes have those people look at your oversights. You may sometimes have a good essay, think that you have a good essay, whereas you have overlooked some of the smaller or minute details that someone else may be able to pick up immediately. Listen for awkward sentences and questions that the person reading the essay has after reading the essay. There should be no gray areas, confusion, ambiguity, or doubts in the writing. Use a dictionary and look for spelling errors, grammar, word usage, and inconsistency with regard to verbs, tenses, concord, and point of view. Then you present your final product. The final product must be free of error. There should not be correctional marks on it, and it must be neat and well presented. Remember, once you have done your draft, and then you decided that I have worked through my draft, now I have to present a final product. It shouldn't be the second draft. As long as you use the word draft, it means you still have to present your final product. So once you have worked with your draft, you should check that there are no mistakes or errors in that final product. Otherwise, it will remain a draft. This is an example of your planning. In brainstorming, you find ideas and vocabulary building, mind maps, write down ideas on paper. Your first draft, you construct a piece. It's like your foundation. And then you clean up the foundation, clean up any excess where you edit and proofread it. And then in the final draft, you create a final and edited product. This is how you teach writing, and it works like a flowchart. So when you teach learners, please ensure that they understand the flow in which planning should go. When you teach writing, please note the following. Learners should often be given the opportunity to write freely without an assessment requirement, meaning that this must be like a scaffolding. You start first with informal activities before you give them formal activities. You teach them how to get used to all the intricacies of writing creative pieces. Don't just shock them and ask them to write a full-length essay for SBA purposes. In more formal writings, teachers are advised to assess a particular skill or sub-skills being dealt with during that particular stage of the process. Meaning, if you are to teach an essay on how to write an essay, first thing that you must target is which skills are my learners, in which skills are my learners struggling. Then you focus on that skill. Start assessing that skill first. And once you are happy that they understand the skill, move on to the next one. For an example, all language skills need to be addressed during each step of the process. For when you look at your ATP, the last skill that has to be taught, or the fourth skill that has to be taught, is language. And it's linked to all previous skills that were taught. If that week you are going to teach argumentative essay, you first have to contact your language skill section and check which language topics need to be taught for you to address the argumentative essay or the writing and presenting skill. So link the two skills. Check which aspects of language have to be taught before you can start deciding on teaching of creative writing. Peers should also learn to edit one another's work, as this interaction is an important part of the process of writing and improves own and others' awareness of the process. So if you give them a full-length essay, it will be very difficult for peers, for their friends, to look into their work because it will be overwhelming. But if you teach a particular skill, a particular section, you give them the opportunity to look at small and focused ideas, like a mind map. Then the question will be, you should check whether the mind map flows, whether the ideas are interlinked. You only look at two things, the flow and the interlinkage of ideas. Therefore, it's easy for peers to look at their one another's work and also to improve on where they lacked in their own writing. Learners should be informed about the characteristics, features, and requirements of different kinds of text. Very important. And learners and teachers should always follow the correct length of text given as indicated in the CAPS document, page 48. Remember, for essays in grade 8, for first additional language, is 180 to 200 words. And in grade 9, in grade 8, home language, is 200 to 250 words for essays. And then in grade 9, for essays, for first additional language, the length is 200 to 250 words, while in home language is 250 to 300 words. So please remember that you must always check on the number, the number of words that must be used. When teaching writing, one should integrate language structure, e.g. punctuation, sentences, as I've already indicated in the past slides. The teacher can ask learners to define a sentence and a paragraph, to describe or define a sentence. For example, a sentence is a set of words that is complete in itself, containing a subject and predicate, conveying a statement, question, exclamation, or command, and consisting of the main clause and sometimes one or more subordinate clauses. While a paragraph is a group of sentences that are built around a main idea, it usually starts with a topic sentence. It has all other sentences supporting its main idea and maintains a consistent flow. The topic sentence, it's usually the first sentence of the paragraph, and it is the main idea of the paragraph. Therefore, when you want to look at a topic sentence, you look at the first sentence of the paragraph, and then that will give you the summary of the whole paragraph. The topic sentence should inform you on what is contained in the paragraph. And it also gives the direction to the rest of the paragraph. It tells you what the paragraph is all about. And there should be a strong verb in the sentence. It must be clearly stated, or it must be a clearly stated idea. Then let's look at the supporting sentence. What is the difference between the topic sentence and the supporting sentence? You've got your topic sentence. Now the supporting sentence should be 4 to 8 sentences that follow after the topic sentence. It supports the main idea. The supporting sentence, as the adjective states, it supports. It's a supporting sentence. It must support the main idea. And it must also give explanation to the main idea and elaborates on the main idea. It must elaborate further on the main idea. If the main idea gives you the summary, this must give you every detail of what the topic sentence is all about. You must make use of simple and complex compound sentences, clauses, and phrases. Now the concluding paragraph. If one paragraph is being written, the learner should summarize the last idea or the theme. When 3 or 6 paragraphs are being written, the last paragraph should include the following. You must always refer, when you conclude your essay, you must always refer to introduction, summarize all paragraphs, give your own opinion, and this is how you use marking symbols. I've included the marking symbols for you to look at how you use your symbols for marking. This will be available for all teachers. Let's look at the essay writing. An essay should have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. In an introduction, learners must make sure that they catch the reader's attention and briefly tell the reader what the essay will be addressing. The body must be divided into paragraphs, we've already spoken about that, and each must pursue a specific idea to the end. So don't juggle your paragraphs, your ideas around. If you've got a paragraph on a certain idea, stick to that idea until the end of the paragraph. Then you can use a transition or conjunction to begin a new paragraph, but it must be linked to the previous one. The writer must address all the ideas he or she wanted to address, keeping to the end. The conclusion is the end, and it should tie up all that was presented by the writer. As this is the end, the writer must not bring in new information. Don't bring in new information in your conclusion. Now, let's look at different essays that will have to be covered in grade 8 and 9. We start first with narrative essay. Narrative essays present a series of events in a meaningful order, or it tells a story, simply tells a story. You narrate a story. Your storyline must be convincing. Usually, use the past tense to recount events. Direct speech can be used to add interest and develop characters. A problem or difficulty is introduced. When you're dealing with narrative essay, you introduce a problem or difficulty. It must develop tension as it builds to a climax. The problem is typically resolved. Remember, when you narrate a story, you must develop an innuendo, reach the climax, and it must also go through the innuendo stage or process. The conclusion could either resolve the issue or leave the reader to reflect. Ensure that you sustain interest by using style, rhetorical devices, or actions. You must also use descriptive elements such as verbs and adjectives. Remember, action verbs increase tension in the story, while figurative language helps to evoke an emotive response in the reader. It is recommended to use a captivating opening line or introductory paragraph so that you can capture the attention of the reader. It is also recommended that to have an unusual, interesting ending. The ending must not be boring. It must also keep the interest. Develop your characters when you writing a narrative essay. You must give a detailed description of people, places, objects, and actions. Let's look at the conventions of narrative essays. In writing your narrative essay, keep the following conventions in mind. Narratives are generally written in the first person, that is, using I or we. However, a third person, he, she, or it, can also be used. Narratives rely on concrete, not abstract, concrete sensory details to convey their point. These details should create a unified, forceful effect or a dominant impression. Narratives as stories should include these story conventions: a plot, including setting and characters, a climax, and an ending. Now, let's move over to reflective essays. In a reflective essay, you need to express your thoughts and emotions about certain events or phenomena. The essay topic you should choose should be interesting and important to you, because the best essays are written on the topics that really matter to the writer. Let's look at the features of a descriptive essay. It must create an atmosphere. You must ask questions on who, what, where, when, and why. Involve readers in experiencing a situation. You must create a picture in words. You must also allow the reader to imagine a scene by describing the place and people involved. Just like in the narrative essay, descriptive words should try to evoke emotions. Explain why this situation is taking place. Use images of sight, of sound, of hearing, and touch. You must also use figures of speech frequently. The essay must be subjective. It must also use emotive and figurative language to set the scene. Let's look at this reflective essay, the plan. This is an example. Take time to think about your shop. Would you open a bakery or a cake shop, a sweet shop or a toy shop? Perhaps you would like to open a charity shop or a computer business. Remember that, apologies, this should be a descriptive essay, not a reflective essay, so we'll pass it. Let's look at the argumentative essay. An argumentative essay is present an argument for or against something. For example, why I believe that women are stronger than men. This was taken from CAPS, page 40. An argumentative essay consists of 4 parts. Claim. It is the main argument. Counterclaim. It is the opposite or opposing the argument. Reason. It tells why the claim or the main argument is made. Then provide evidence to support the reason. What are the features of an argumentative essay? Show a specific opinion or a viewpoint and argue to defend or motivate your position. Sustain view clearly throughout. Try to convince the reader to share his or her point of view subjectively. Give a range of arguments to support and substantiate your view. Focus on main points for or against a statement. Express subjectively and strong opinion. And use emotive language. Use a variety of rhetorical devices, and persuasive techniques. Conclude with a strong, clear, and convincing statement reflecting the writer's opinion. And then these are the points to remember. Start the introduction with a sentence that gets the reader interested in the topic. Remember, you always have to create an atmosphere that will grab the reader's attention. We are always trying to grab the reader's attention, your audience. Include the background. Providing readers with background on the topic allows them to better understand the issue being presented. State the opinion or view, and in this essence, it must be this must be the essence of an argumentative essay. Create a clear, firm, and debatable essay. Now you can see, argumentative essay should also inform your debating skills. So if you are looking at creating a debate in class, look at the features of an argumentative essay. Do effective and thorough research on the topic. You cannot come and argue for or against the topic that you don't have an idea of. Try to research on the topic. Find concrete evidence on the topic. Try to find some realistic facts and use those to build on your argument. You must incorporate logos, pathos, and ethos. This is a basic format for an argumentative essay. It must have an introduction, and the body must have at least 3 paragraphs. In the case, the first paragraph, that's where you discuss a single idea, state the evidence available that supports the idea, and then in the second paragraph, that's where you state you state your point of argument, along with the evidence that has been collected during the research. The third paragraph, that is where the third point and evidence goes into the paragraph. If there are more points that need to be made in order to ensure that the reader fully understands the writer's position, use a separate paragraph for each one. And then when you conclude, do not add new information. The conclusion is meant to pull everything together by synthesizing all of the information that has been presented throughout the essay. Keep in mind, the conclusion is the last part of the essay that the audience will be left with. So state why the topic is important, go over the main points, and review the opinions and views and the statements. Emphasizing the learner tips on writing good essays. Stick to the prescribed number of ways. When you teach this, please remind your learners, especially in first additional language, to stick to the prescribed number of ways. Even though in home language, we don't necessarily have to count the number of ways used, but learners must know that they have to use certain number of ways to write their pieces. They must also remember to to use paragraphs in their writing. They must plan and show that planning. Remember, the first component in the rubric is content and planning. Content, planning, and format, CPF. Select a main idea for your essay and stick to your topic. You must always start with a good opening paragraph. It can be short, but must capture the reader's attention. Your essay must end with a conclusion. End of your essay and never let the reader think that the essay is still going to be finished later. Link all your paragraphs by sticking to your main idea or thought. Paragraphs that are not linked in thought will definitely cause you to lose marks. And be careful. Do not use direct speech or quotes unless absolutely necessary. Always use capital I. Never begin a sentence with because or cause. Do not use slang words or SMS language in any essay. Do not use abbreviations or numbers like 3 or 4. Write them out. Stick to one tense. Don't jump from present and past to future tenses all the time. Look at your concord. There must be an agreement between your subject and your verb. Right. Let's quickly look at the last section that we are covering today, your transactional text. Remember, we don't have to specify longer or whether it's a shorter or a longer transactional text. That is not necessary in grade 8 and 9. However, you still have to know the differences between the two. The marks are the same. It's out of 20 for both grade 8, grade 9, home language and first additional language, and 10 marks for both for grade 8, home language and first additional language. However, in grade 8, we still have to convert the mark from 20 to 10 marks. That is your task 2 in term 1. Apologies, task 4 in term 2. Transactional text. Look at the instructions. Let us look at how to give instructions. We give instructions when we are describing how something is done. Learners must be able to explain how to use a tool or an instrument, prepare food, repair faults, etc. To the teacher, the learner must understand the situation and what the product of giving instruction demonstration should be or do. Encourage learners to write correct and logical sequence of instructions. Learners must be able to explain the working or use of any article. Make use of manuals, instructions, and operations. Remember, when you buy a new tool or a new utensil, sometimes you get an instruction manual inside. Look at that manual instruction and try to see if you can't cut it out and show learners how instruction should be given. Consider vocabulary, grammar, expression, technical language, and phrases that must be used. What are the features of giving instructions? Instructions must be in a chronological order. The instructions should be clear, short, and concise. It could either be written in point or in paragraph form. If paragraph form is used, then logical connectors are used to help sequence the chronological order of actions. For point form, the numbering of steps indicates the chronological order. Remember, when you are asked to give instruction in an exam, you are further instructed to write 1 up to 7, like in your summary. So if you were to give instructions, you will start first with 1 and end with number 7 or 6, depending on the number of points that the examiner wants you to give. In the instance of numbered instructions, sentence must be as short and simple as possible. Write only one fact or a step per line. Don't write 2 steps in 1 line or in 1 point. In both instances, the imperative is used. The you is understood or implied. All instructions must be given out in or written out in the present tense. Let us look at examples of giving instructions. This is the example of a summary form. You see the topic sentence, and then the supporting sentences, and lastly the concluding sentences. Now this is your summary form, especially with home language learners. Now let's look at an example of giving instruction in a point form. Usually with first additional language learners, you see your topic sentence, it has got steps. Step number 1, start with first and ends with ek. Step number 2, then and ek. Step number 3, next and boiling. Step number 4 and step number 5, and concluding sentences. Remember, you must always have topic sentence and concluding sentences, and in between the steps or the supporting sentences. Now let's look at one of the most favored or common transactional text, the diary entry. A diary entry is a written record of the writer's thoughts, feelings, and activities during a particular day. When you talk of entry, we are talking of one day. Your thoughts, feelings, and activities which took place in a day. What are the features? It is always written in first person, I, my, we, etc. Events should be written in the correct order as they happened. The date or day should be included. It must be written in an informal style. You must only use past tense when you are writing about events that happened. You must also use informal language. That is, I'll instead of I will. Follow all the writing processes that we talked about earlier. This is an example of your diary. This is a one-day diary entry, so it's a diary entry. If there were two, it would be diary entries. Here is your start. This is where you start, dear diary. And then this happened on the 13th of January 2015. Look at the use of first person, I, we, my. And look at the introductory sentence. Today, my uncle from Umtata visited us. It happened before this was written. Therefore, use the past tense. It was so exciting. He always brings us gifts and takes us out somewhere. So remember, it must always be in present tense. Let's look at the email. How to write an email? In this world of technology, electronic communication is fast replacing the traditional letter of writing of the past. An electronic email, or email in short, is posted from one computer to another with the support of the internet. But you don't need that when you write a creative piece. This is the format of an email. The email address of the person who sends the email. That is always the first line. Remember to type in the recipient's email address. It will usually start with the person's name or surname or any name, then followed by @ the icon @ followed by their company or email, the service provider or company, and then the country's code. South Africa uses ZA. Remember, Arab countries use Arab forms of the code. Like in the Americans, it will be US. I've seen in Lesotho is LE. Therefore, remember, it's not SA, it is ZA. Therefore, it will be the name @ Yahoo gmail.com or the name at uofs.ac.za. Here is an example. This is the name at gmail.co.za. Or it can be sanabul@gmail.com if you are using an international code. If you like to send the same email to more than one person, you can send a courtesy copy or carbon copy CC by adding their email address in the CC box. You do not need to use this field. For the purpose of writing for scholastic purposes, we don't encourage you to CC anyone. Just use the recipient's address. The subject box allows you to enter a one-line summary of the contents of your email. You should always type your name at the end of the email. Some people include their job title and telephone numbers underneath their names. What are the features of the email? Start your email with "Dear," just like a formal letter. Start your message on a new line. If you are writing an email on a paper for an exam, leave a line open. Divide your writing into paragraphs as we stated in the previous slides. When you do writing, we must always divide our writing into paragraphs. Your register must suit the purpose of the emails. Remember, it is the audience and the purpose. And here we are specifically referring to the purpose. What is the purpose of that email? It is informal when you are emailing a friend or sending an email to your friend, but it is formal when it is for a business. Same like when we write letters. We have informal letter when you write into your friend, and then we have formal letter when writing for a business. Your introductions to explain your purpose of writing. Avoid the expression, "I am writing this email because." Use a more interesting way of introducing your subject. Your paragraph should flow logically. End your email with an appropriate closing. Here is an example of an email template. We spoke of the sender's address. This should be your recipient's address. Here is a CC, the courtesy copy or carbon copy. And then you add the subject, what the email is all about. And then "Dear madam," or "Dear colleagues," or "Dear friend." Then your paragraphs will follow, and then your conclusion. And then the new, one of the newest transactional texts is the blog. What is a blog? A website on which someone writes about personal opinions, activities, and experiences. Together with the email, they will be replacing the postcard. I've seen in one of the guidelines for grade 12 that they are no more going to use postcards as one of the shorter transactional text. Therefore, the email and the blog have taken the space of the postcards. Businesses can use blog for marketing purposes. Readers can write comments on your blog. When you want to create a blog, you must have the following: a dream, clear goals, and then the criteria to create a blog. What are the criteria needed to create a blog? There must be additionables. That is, it must be physical. It must be proven. It must have a strong opinion, elicit emotions. We need to make sure that our content meets one or more of these three criteria. The reader can do something physical. It must be practical. The reader learns something. If you want to teach someone, you need supporting evidence. Your blog must contain facts, research, and expert input, meaning external contributions from people who know more about the subject. The reader must feel something. It must be emotional. You felt something while you wrote it. It's your voice and your opinion. It means something to you, good or bad. If you don't care, why will your readers care? Here is an example of a blog. You'll have this. Let us look at the aspect to consider when writing a blog. Put the reader first. The purpose of writing is clear, sometimes persuasive and communication. Organize your thoughts. You don't need a detailed outline for most writing. You must use short paragraphs, short sentences, and simple words. You must be specific. Write in a conventional style, as used in a conversation, not formal. Let's look at a poster. What are the features of a poster? It's one of the common ones, this. Usually displayed in a public place. We post or we put posters in a public places so that they can be seen. It displays information, advertises goods, services, or events. Keep visibility and design in mind when designing a poster. Heading must be attractive to draw attention. Use big letters that are easy to read and large pictures. Remember, when you write in the exam, you are not supposed to use pictures or illustrations. Just use letters that are easy to read. Short sentences or catchy slogans are effective. It must be in a clear and simple layout. The font, the color, and bold print to accentuate. If poster needs to go on a lamppost, make sure the information can be read from several meters away. What are the features of a poster? The design must attract attention. Use bold colors and eye-catching visuals. The important information must be visible. Make sure all the relevant information is on the poster. The date, time, and the name of the show, and all the booking details. Advertising poster. The information must persuade the viewer to buy the product or use the services. Always keep your audience in mind as you have said it. The text is limited. Space provided must be effectively used. Don't waste space unnecessarily. The tone and style of the writing will vary depending on the subject. A poster can be used to inform, advertise, promote, or a cause or create awareness about an issue. How to teach a poster? Divide learners into pairs or groups of 5. Show them a poster. Discuss features that you have taught them about. Individuals tell little stories about reading, what, where, when, and etc. Let the group discuss the topic. Groups do planning by making small models looking or adhering to features of a poster, that is color, font, size, etc. Design a draft poster or a small model. Some can use ICT, some are artists, Some are creative in words, poets. All skills are explored. Exchange to edit the models. Attend to the comments made by revising. And then your final product, which can now be presented. This is an example of a poster. Right, advertisement. What are the features of an advertisement? It must catch attention of the reader through color, font, or slogan. There should be a slogan and a logo. You must know the difference between the two. Create the desire to own the product or use the service. It is designed to persuade someone to buy or a product or pay for a service. Be clear on what the product or service is. Be clear who the target market is. The words and visuals must appeal to the emotion of the target market. Layout, font, and pictures play a big role. You should concentrate on the words of your, or the wording of your advertisement. How well you use your language. Create a need for that product. Highlight the strengths and benefits of the product. You have to be persuasive and include techniques such as alliteration, rhyme, rhetorical questions, pun, and the use of personal pronouns. Remember, an advertisement is a communication tool between the producer and the buyer. Therefore, the advertisement must catch the eye of the reader. Create a desire to own or buy the product or use the service. The target market plays a role in designing of the advert. So keep the design simple. Your color, layout, font, and size play an important role in the effectiveness of your advertisement. Remember, good advertisement should achieve at least one of the following criteria. Catch and keep the attention of the reader, ensure that the operative words stand out. Create a desire to own the product or use the service. Make the reader actually go out and buy, use the product or service. And the following must be kept in mind while designing an advert. The target market. Before you can decide on writing the advert, keep the following in mind. You are going to have to choose your target market, for whom the advertisement is intended. Positioning. Where and when the advertisement will appear, in what media, at what time, and where in the magazine. Appeals. To what sense is the advertisement appealing? The layout, size, and font. The attitude. Is it sincere or not? And the ratio between fact and opinion. The effectiveness of the choice of color or lack thereof. The language used, whether it is a cliched, repetitive, figurative, or rhetorical. Curriculum vitae and the covering letter. Whenever you use, you are supposed to, or instructed to write a curriculum vitae or a CV, it must always be accompanied by a covering letter. Let's look at a covering letter. It is as important as a CV. Features. You must address, your address must be on the right-hand side of your letter. No punctuation in the address except full stops for P.O. box. Put the date underneath the address. Leave a line between the address and the addressee. Include contact person, the department, and the address of the business. Leave a line between the address and greeting. The subject line summarizes the content of the letter. The covering letter takes the format of an official letter. Let's look at the introduction of a covering letter. In your covering letter, you must state why you are writing the letter. Mention the job you are applying for and where you heard about it. State what you are currently doing. The body. Highlight your skills, abilities, and experience relevant to the job. Do not simply repeat your CV, meaning that what you included in your CV should not appear anywhere else in your covering letter. Refer to your personal qualities which cannot be indicated on a CV. And then the conclusion, state your availability. Indicate how close the job is to your home, when can you start work, and when you will finish. Mention that you have enclosed a CV. Supply contact information so the employer can get hold of you. And then lastly, thank an employer. Just leave a line between the body of the letter and the ending. Use a formal ending such as yours faithfully. Always sign and state your full name at the end. Let's look at the curriculum vitae. A curriculum vitae is a document through which the writer presents himself or herself to the world. The document should present a strong first impression of the candidate. It should present information clearly, objectively, and concisely. Remember, the CV must address the post for which the candidate seeks employment. For example, a candidate who applies for a sports-related post will present a CV which speaks more about the candidate's prowess in sports rather than in the academic field. People nowadays make use of templates. It may be worthwhile to find out what makes a good template and how to adapt and fill them in mostly and most usefully. This will depend on your teacher's preference, which template your teacher prefers, so you can use it, or use the simplest of all the templates available. It is useful to know that every CV must address a situation. E.g., a CV for a particular job should speak mainly of the writer's involvement in that particular area of field. Tips to consider when compiling a CV: present yourself in a document to the world, present a strong first impression, present information clearly, objectively, and concisely, address the post for which the candidate seeks employment. Provide the following: personal details, formal qualifications, work experience if applicable. Referee, they may be contacted for clarity and verification of your information. Then the obituary. Eulogy or obituary is a tribute to commemorate someone's life delivered by a friend or family member at the person's funeral. What is the outline of the obituary? Your heading must include the deceased name and surname. Give short information on the date of death, funeral, and address where condolences can be sent, or where the condolences can be sent. Describe the person in one sentence. Perhaps quote a line of poetry or a line from a book that reflects your personality or the effect you hope to have had on others. Briefly summarize his or her life, including something about his or her childhood and schooling, his or her studies, his or her career, and his family life. Write a paragraph that describes the opinion other people in your community might have held of him. End off with a meaningful sentence that will leave an impression on the audience. This is the example of an obituary or a death notice. Full name of the character of the person, place of the residence, date of birth, date of death, age at the time of death, the cause of death, educational history, occupation, what the person accomplished, name of the character's parents or the person's parents, names of the closest deceased and surviving relatives, and the place of funeral or burial. Speech. A written speech is intended to be performed for an audience. The purpose could be to inform, to influence, or to entertain. The informal speeches are usually not prepared. They are often made in response to a request for a speech at a gathering. The tone of an informal speech is light and sincere. Writing and delivering a speech. When you write a speech, think about the following before you start. What style to use? Serious, humorous, etc. Will you encourage? Will you be aggressive, gentle, truthful, and diplomatic? When are you speaking? The main speaker? After dinner interval? In the morning, afternoon, evening? Where? Christening, wedding, business, lunch, school function, in a yard, hall, lunch, around a table? Why? What is the purpose of the audience, of the occasion? Is it to educate? Or is it a motivational speech? Or are you going to entertain your audience with humorous anecdotes about last year? Why have you been invited to speak? Who will be there? How many? Is it a younger or an older audience? Is it an athlete, a businessman, is it a businesswoman? What are their interests? What is the audience's interest? And what message would you like to hear? Show convictions, enthusiasm, and self-confidence in the planning stage, and it will show in your presentation. A strong or clever opener will attract attention. Develop your points well and avoid cliches. Decide where you should pause and where to use gestures naturally and for what purpose. Keep eye contact. Use contracting tones and points but remain audible. Use fairly short sentences with simple ideas using familiar examples. Balance criticisms with reasonable alternatives. Consider the closing. Leave the audience with a thought or two. Visual or physical aids may be used, but your words must come first. You may use notes, but only as a point of, for references. Avoid irritating mannerisms. Use language that expresses your maturity, values, and backgrounds. Swearing, crudity, and profanity are unacceptable. What are the features of the speech? What do you need to consider before writing a speech in the exam? What is the core message? The central idea of your presentations must be clear. You aim to express the core message in one sentence. Show that you are passionate about your core message. Write about something that you absolutely believe in. You may share a personal experience. Organize your information. Your speech needs structure. There must be an introduction, a body consisting of 3 supporting points, and a conclusion. If you are aware, we always stick into 3 supporting points. Remember the number of sentences that must make up a paragraph. So you must always bear that in mind when you have to choose how many supporting points you need to have. Be concise. If possible, make use of speech techniques such as repetitions and figures of speech. Rhetorical questions catches audience attentions, make them feel involved. Make use of logical connectors. This indicates more points are to follow in the subsequent paragraph. The use of connectors should help order the information. Each point must be supported and explained. The conclusion should leave the listeners with something to reflect upon. Right, business letter. We shall skip this one. Right, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of our presentation. Next time, we shall look at the literature aspects. And until then, thank you very much and enjoy your next sessions. Thank you.